Tendril is dependent origination. And we can't talk about emptiness or ultimate reality without first talking about dependent origination, right? I mean, dependent origination means that things happen in dependence upon other things, right? Everything around you has occurred through some kind of dependence. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay? So, if you want to understand emptiness, you have to understand dependent origination. Why? Emptiness is talking about how things don't exist. Emptiness is describing the way in which things do not exist. Okay? So you have to understand the way in which things do exist to negate it. Right? So there's dependent origination describes how things exist, and then emptiness is the absence of that or the lack of that. Okay? So we're going to talk about how things exist in dependence on other things, and then we're going to talk about the lack of that. All right? So, it's really the flip side. So dependent origination and emptiness are really two sides of a coin. It's talking about how things do exist, and talking about how things don't exist. Okay? Truly. All right? So we're using a commentary by Holy Pavanka Rinpoche, which was translated by Holy Kin Rinpoche. And it's a beautiful, one of the most beautiful explanations of dependent origination. And there are three different explanations according to different levels of understanding or different levels of sophistication. Right? They were taught by the four great schools of ancient India, which are not the same as the four Tibetan schools. In ancient India, this is not Tibet. This is not Tibet. This is in India. So in India, there were four ancient schools, four philosophical schools, main philosophical schools of Buddhism. And so a couple of schools kind of got together and decided that they were going to pitch and sell emptiness and dependent origination a certain way. And so these schools were called the Functionalists. There's a group which included the Abhidharma school, the Mind-Only school, and the Logic or Sutra school. Okay. So these philosophical systems believe that dependent origination means that things exist in dependence upon causes and conditions. Everything is caused. It's like in the Bible when Jesus says, I don't know, lemons don't come from peach seeds or whatever he said. Right? Everything has a cause. Everything exists in dependence upon a cause. Right? So in this system, in the functionalist system, they express the nature of existence as everything exists independent upon causes and conditions. Okay, nothing is random. Everything is caused. So what would be causes and conditions? Well, cause would be, for example, like the lemon seed. The conditions would be the other supporting factors, like the water and the earth and the light and the nutrients and whatnot. Okay, so based upon causes and conditions, things exist. All right. So makes sense, right? No problem? Yeah. Now, the issue with that, and the limitation of that is that understanding this is supposed to end your mental suffering and your mental afflictions and make you happy forever. Right? According to Buddhism, there's only one way that you can ever be happy forever, and that is by seeing emptiness, by experiencing ultimate reality. There's nothing else that exists which can put an end to our mental afflictions permanently. We have Band-Aids and we have temporary fixes, and it's like taking an aspirin. You feel better for a little while, but it doesn't really deal with the fact that it's suffering at its root. So these explanations have to serve the important purpose of dealing with our mental afflictions and helping to eliminate them so that we can be happy forever, right? So if we're looking at this explanation of dependent origination, how things exist, you can say, okay, I go to work and somebody screams at me, right? I understand that he was caused. I understand that he came from, his mother and his father, and, I understand that all these causes came together. I came to work and he came to work and we met, and, something went wrong and he yelled at me. But does that really end my mental afflictions? Does that really do anything so that I'm not angry or pissed off when he's yelling at me? It really doesn't, you know? I mean, maybe I can say, yeah, you know, he had a bad day, you know, his wife yelled at him, and I understand where he's coming from, and I can be a little more empathetic, and I can be a little less upset, but it doesn't really address our afflictions in a meaningful way at their root. So this explanation of how things exist is limited. All right. So there are two more versions which are more sophisticated and more helpful. Okay. And then number two is an explanation by what's called the independent group. These are a couple of philosophical schools of ancient India, which included the middle way school, the lower half of the middle way school, and the Madhyamika Subtantrika school, if you care. They say that our explanation is more sophisticated and more refined than the functionalists. They say that things exist in dependence upon their parts. Right? Everything is comprised of parts. Everything exists in dependence upon parts. If something exists, it has parts. Everything that exists because parts came together. Right? Like I've got a body and a mind. I got arms and legs. You know, this room is made up of walls and ceilings. Anything you can think of that exists has parts, and therefore everything in existence exists in dependence upon parts. Okay, that's how they describe dependent origination. But it still doesn't take care of our unhappiness, right? I mean, if I'm having some kind of craving, if I'm having some kind of affliction, if I'm thinking, oh, you know, I gotta have a cookie, you know, I gotta eat the cookie, I can't. I mean, it's just like, oh, I can't, you know, I shouldn't eat cookies, you know, because I've already eaten too many cookies, you know. Or, you know, this person's so beautiful, and I have to like get them to like me, or whatever it is, right? Whatever the affliction or the craving might be. I mean, I can think, okay, well, the cookie's made of chocolate chips and flour and butter, you know, so it's okay that I don't eat it because it's just made of like dry flour. Or, you know, I don't really need to go out with that person, or I really don't crave that person or want that person because they're just a bunch of arms and legs and atoms, and, you know, it doesn't really do it, right? I mean, it doesn't really put an end to the craving or the affliction, does it? And it's not really an effective means to help the mind do what it needs to do, if you will, right? So then there's a higher explanation. There's a more sophisticated explanation. Okay, and this is the third group. Is called the consequence group. It's comprised of Madhyamika and Prasangika, which is the higher half of the middle way group. And the consequence group is called Prasangika because they believe that through a certain consequential logic, that people would understand things and realize things by using a certain kind of logical statement, that people could gain insight and realization. So anyway, this view is the view which is accepted by Lord Buddha and Arya Nagarjuna, Master Chandrakirti and Shantideva, Dalai Lama, Panchen Lama. So this view of dependent origination is the highest group, the highest view, and they say that things exist in dependence upon the projections that are coming from you. Right? So things exist in dependence upon perceiving them the way you do. All right? So, and those projections are forced upon you by your past karma. Now, what does that mean? What it means is your mind is functioning a certain way, certain impulses are arising, certain thoughts are occurring, which are forced upon you. You know, we don't sit there and think, I'm going to have this thought now. Let me think it. Okay? It doesn't work that way, right? Thoughts arise on their own, seemingly. All right? From a Buddhist perspective, thoughts arise as an expression of karma ripening. Okay? So, and perceptions occur as a function of how the mind processes data that it takes in, right? We take in information through our senses in a particular way, which is unique to us. You know, we get photons of light, we get wavelengths of sound, you know, we get tactile stimulation of nerve endings, little sodium, you know, molecules move, and electrical signals occur, and all these things are going on, and somehow all this electrical activity and, movement of ions and blah, 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 results in a thought and a perception that says, ooh, that's sexy, or whatever, right? And that perception and that awareness is a function of our mind and how our mind is functioning and how our mind is receiving, interpreting, and processing the data that comes in, right? So this school says that the very existence of everything around us, our own mind and our own thoughts, come from projections of our past karma. Projections forced upon us by our past karma, right? What is our past karma? Our past karma is all the seeds of everything we've ever thought, said, or done in the past. We collect karma of body, speech, and mind. Every time we think a thought, every time we say something, every time we do something, there is a residual energy left, which is what is known as a karmic seed. So the residual energy of every thought, word, and deed is collected in our mind stream, and is our mind stream. And then that collection of impulses, some of which are dormant, some of which are active, is what we call our mind and the expression of our mind. And therefore, based upon what those energetic impulses are doing and those little electrical firings are doing, the mind functions in a certain way, it thinks in a certain way, and it perceives in a certain way, and it projects in a certain way. So the nature of perception is that we take in data through our senses, it's processed by the mind, and then we project an identity and a concept, right? Oh, that's a person. Oh, that's a tonka. Oh, that's a wall. Oh, that's a light. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's bad. Oh, they're my friend. Oh, they're my enemy. On and on and on endlessly, right? So that process, okay, is what's being described when we talk about things exist in dependence upon your projections. All right? So they're saying, this group is saying that everything exists as a projection of your own mind forced upon you by your past karma.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course.
Is that concept mutually exclusive? Or can it not exist in alignment with the other two? Because it seems like you can recognize it, there's other constitutions, and then so.
Yeah, each is more subtle than the next.
Yeah.
So the first presentation, which says everything exists based upon causes, right? It's correct. Everything does exist based upon causes, but it doesn't. But it's not adequate. It's not comprehensive enough. Okay, and so there are things which are unchanging and not caused. Not many, but for example, empty space is unchanging and uncaused, which is the frame of reference which holds something. If this cup were here or not here, the empty space which contains it would still be there. So that's why the next group, the independent group, says our explanation is better because there are uncaused things. Therefore, it's not an adequate definition of all reality. And so then they say, everything has parts. But the problem with that is it doesn't remove your unhappiness, right? But it's very useful. If you're training someone to not think of things as being self-existent, if we're training someone to not think of being there from their own side, then the parts approach is very effective. To say, look, there is no cup here from its own side. The nature of the cup doesn't reside in the cup. It's clay, it's paint, its shape, its texture. If I took the handle away as a cup, if I made it half as high as a cup, and you could go on and on and on through all these different analyses to say, the parts are not making this thing a cup, because you can take away any one of the parts, combinations of the parts, blah blah blah. And when do you lose the cup, and when do you get the cup? The cup is coming from the concept that we apply to the parts or to the stuff, which is the more sophisticated view of the third group. Okay, it says, there is no cupness here. The cup only exists as a concept projected upon a basis. And everything exists that way. There's a basis of projection There is something there, which we take in data about through our senses, and then we conceptualize it a certain way, and we call it a certain thing, and we relate to it that way, and that's our valid reality. That's why, if you see some kind of dirty, nasty beggar on the street, it is your valid reality. But could we take in data through our senses and process that data and experience it not as a dirty, nasty beggar? Well, it's much more complex, right, than a cup. Because you can say with a cup, oh yeah, I could take away the handle. But with a human being, you say, well, if I took away the smell, is he no longer a dirty, nasty beggar? If you took away the dirty clothes, or gave him a haircut, or her a haircut, and gave him a place to live, when do they stop being a dirty, nasty beggar? And even down to their humanity. When does someone stop being human and start being divine? Is it if they're good all the time? If they're loving all the time? Is it if they're glowing in light? What makes someone a holy being as opposed to an ordinary human being? These are all just labels and concepts and terms, you see? And, what if I could perceive a different spectrum of light? And I did see a halo shining out around their head. Would that make them a holy being? So that's the idea of the analysis, That's the reasoning behind it, okay? So that's a shift in karma, right? I mean, if I stop perceiving a dirty, nasty beggar as that, and I see them as a glowing, radiant, holy being, what caused it? Is it because there was something out there that changed? No. The thing that changed was my perception, my faculties, my mental capacity, my perceptions, my valid perception shifted, okay? I took a basis, a being, right? And somehow things shifted around, and they were no longer dirty, and they were no longer stinky, and they were no longer ugly, and they were no longer badly behaved, and all of a sudden they were like incredible and loving and virtuous and glowing in light. Did it come from them? We want to say yes, obviously it came from them. It's over there. It must have come from over there, right? And so this is the important element to understand is that the perception does not come from over there, right? The data comes, say, from over there, okay? The processing and perception and creation of the identity and meaning around the data comes from me. There is data there. There is something there I'm perceiving with my senses. But what it's turned into, what it's made into, what it's perceived of validly comes from me. It doesn't come from over there. Okay? I mean, quantum physics, maybe it's useful, I don't know. But from a Buddhist perspective, there is a blank screen there. There is infinite potential there. There is stuff there. It depends upon the perceiver. It doesn't depend upon the stuff that's over there. So that's the idea. All right? And it's just a shift in perception that causes me to see it one way or the other. I could see it as a dirty, smelly human beggar. I could see it as a being glowing in light. Or I could see it as a dog. And you say, it can't be a dog, it can't be a human, it can't be a holy being. It's one or the other. It's because its identity and nature exists from its own side. So here we go. This is where we get into emptiness, right? So when we talk about how things exist, if we say the dirty, smelly beggar exists independent upon me perceiving it that way, right? Then it doesn't have any nature of its own. Right? Yes.
I just wanted to share something that I learned this weekend. I don't have the exact scientific article, but you were mentioning quantum physics to support emptiness. And someone was saying that uranium, the thing that makes atomic bombs, in order for it to exist, it has to have someone to perceive it or observe it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't have the link, but that's kind of amazing.
Awesome.
I mean, it's basic. It's basic. I'm not a physicist, but it's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right? The perceiver causes something to be a wave or a particle to be here or there. It's the act of observing something that brings it into being. Well, that's emptiness. And that's the projection. That's dependent origination. right? And so we have to make the distinction between dependent origination and emptiness, right? Dependent origination is how things exist, okay? The dirty, smelly beggar exists in dependence upon me validly perceiving it that way. How is it that it does not exist? It does not exist without me projecting it, right? That's its emptiness, okay? The fact that it does not exist unless I project it is its emptiness, right? There is nothing there from its own side, and you have to say from its own side. There is no dirty, smelly beggar there from its own side. There is something there. There is a basis there. There is stuff. Call it quantum potential, call it whatever you want. They're just words, you know, that we conceptualize around. But the point is there's something there which we perceive and we conceptualize and we experience in a unique way, in a way that's unique to our mind. And so the emptiness of the dirty, smelly beggar is that he does not have any identity of his own outside of our projections. The identity does not come from it, its own side, okay? That's the emptiness, okay? All right? So there is no beggar there from its own side. The lack of existing from its own side is emptiness. Okay? The fact that nothing exists from its own side is emptiness. The fact that every single thing I perceive does not have an identity in the nature of its own is its emptiness. The fact that I do not have any nature of my own is my emptiness. Every single thing in existence has its own emptiness. This has its own emptiness. This has its own emptiness. Why? Because first you talk about how it exists. This exists as a cup, container, whatever you want to call it, in dependence upon my calling it that. Right? The fact that it's not a container from its own side is its emptiness. So you have to be clear about how it exists to negate how it exists. Right? And emptiness is the negation of how it exists from its own side. Right? It's taking away self-existence. Right? Emptiness is taking away self-existence. Is an easy way to think about it. There is no such thing as a self-existent lid. Right? There is no lid here independent of my projections. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So, you know, there's raw data. There's something about us that makes it into that reality for us. And how's that helpful? How's that useful in ending our suffering and putting an end to all of our problems? Well, you have to understand karma and emptiness together. They always go together, you could say. If nothing exists from its own side, and if it only exists as is forced upon us by our past karma, how can you talk about emptiness without talking about karma? Right? Something only exists for us as we're forced to perceive it by our past karma. Right? When our past karma ripens, it forces us to perceive Paul. You know, everybody perceives him slightly differently. Right? But we all perceive him, I think, as Paul. So, okay, that's how Paul exists. If Paul starts screaming at me, right, how does that understanding put an end to my suffering and mental affliction? Well, if Paul is screaming at me and I go like, you know what, there's something going on, there's something there, I think it's unpleasant, I'm feeling it's unpleasant, I'm definitely sure it's unpleasant now, it's screaming at me and it's saying nasty things that I don't like and I feel very offended and upset. If I remember and recognize that I'm having this valid perception because it's being forced upon me by my past karma, and this is really an empty object, right? This is a ball of potential which I'm experiencing as anger, because my past karma has configured my mind that way. My past karma has configured my senses and my mind and my perceptions that way, you know. David will be sitting there saying like, oh, that's not unpleasant, that's lovely. It's true. All those things he's saying about John are true, and it's high time someone said it. So, the exact same experience is pleasant to David and unpleasant to me. So the pleasant nature, the unpleasant nature is not coming from Paul or the experience or anything else. It's coming from the perceiver, right? So that's how this view of dependent origination can put an end to your suffering. By understanding the laws of karma, and by understanding how karma and emptiness work together, and acknowledging that every single thing I experience in my entire life is about my inner landscape, not the outer stuff. Every single thing I experience is about my mind and my perception and how I'm reacting and how I'm relating to it and how I'm seeing it. And owning that nothing is ever about the outside stuff. Right? The outside stuff is simply a shadow of what we did in the past. Right? The outside stuff is a distant reflection of our bad behavior in the past or our good behavior in the past. Right? And my whole concern, my whole priority in this life is how I behave in the present moment to collect the energies, karmas, and causes to have the future that I want, future outcomes that I want. I want to be happy all the time. I want to be in paradise all the time. Therefore, I have to collect those causes right now. If I don't collect the causes for my own happiness, if I don't collect the causes for paradise, if I don't collect the causes for realizations, I won't have them. So this view of dependent origination and ultimate reality allows us or trains us to create the future world that we want. By understanding where our own suffering comes from, by understanding why we experience negativity, by understanding what we need to do when things are bad, so that we collect causes to have a better future. Right? Does that make sense? Any question? Yeah? Okay. Let's see. In the basic, we haven't gotten into it, but basic laws of karma, like produces like, right? If Paul's screaming at me and I scream back, I've just collected the causes to be screamed at a lot in the future. So, the thing that we normally do, responding in kind, is the thing which perpetuates our suffering. So, understanding karma and emptiness is all about saying, okay, I'm hearing unpleasant screaming. It came from something I did in the past. My mind is experiencing it as extremely unpleasant. It's really lousy for me. I'm really unhappy. And I have to generate a positive internal state to create that energy and to create those karmas and to create that future for myself. Because it's not about what's outside me. It's just about my internal state. Somebody over here has got a completely different internal state about the exact same outer stimuli. So it's like that. Okay? So once we understand that, and once we get good at that, then we can really accelerate our practice, right? So empty. So we say emptiness. People often sort of lose the thread when we say emptiness, when we talk about emptiness. Emptiness is very simple. It's the fact that nothing's any other way. Okay, there's dependent origination. Things exist in dependence upon our projections, which are forced upon us by our past karma. Nothing exists any other way. Okay? Nothing exists self-existently. Nothing exists from its own side. Nothing exists any other way except and as a projection forced upon us by our past karma. That's emptiness, right? And when you can experience that directly, when you can be in a deep state of meditation and have a direct communion with that reality, with that awareness, when one can be in a deep meditative state to see that the ultimate nature of reality is actually a state free of projections and conceptions, right? Is it possible that a state exists where there's nothing conceptualized and nothing projected about it? Yes. Hard for us to wrap our minds around it. We have to experience it directly in meditation. Right? So when we can experience emptiness or ultimate reality directly, in a state free of conceptions and projections, then we know that that is the true nature of things, right? That is how things ultimately exist. There is a level of reality, there is a level of existence, which is not wrapped up in projections and concepts, and not dependent upon projections and concepts, right? And so these are sometimes called the two truths, the two levels of reality: conventional reality and ultimate reality. Conventional reality is how we live, which is everything's conceptualized, everything's named, everything's given a term, everything's projected. That's yellow, that's red, that's blue, that's a boy, that's a girl, that's good, that's bad. It's the life of subject-object interaction in conception, right? But so it's a misnomer, the two truths. It's actually two levels of reality. So whenever you hear that, it's common in Buddhist terminology, whenever you hear people talking about the two truths, it's really a misnomer. They're talking about the two levels of reality: conventional reality and ultimate reality. Conventional reality being where we are in the realm of projections and names and terms, and ultimate reality is state free of projections and concepts and names and terms. Okay? Let's see if there's anything I didn't cover in the homework. Okay, so two other things on the homework. We started to talk about karma and emptiness, right? So there's a homework question that says, can the idea of karma and that's ethics or morality coexist with the idea of emptiness, or do they contradict each other? What would you say?
Can you read the first part of it again? Sorry.
How can the idea of karma, meaning ethics or morality, coexist with the idea of emptiness? Do they contradict each other? Meaning, if things don't have a nature of their own, if things don't exist from their own side, then is it the case that right and wrong don't matter because things aren't any certain way?
Well, the answer would be no, because it depends on your perception of your own morality. So like there is no ultimate morality, it's ultimate in the sense that it is your own personal ultimate.
You have to elaborate a bit.
So like what might be moral for me could be immoral for someone else, or slightly less moral for someone else, or slightly more virtuous for someone else, but it depends on what your perception of reality is, what your false perception of reality is until you've perceived reality correctly.
Anybody else?
Maybe.
Your reality is empty. You have the potential or ability to create your own reality by how you act, think, and speak. Because everything is empty, because reality is empty. Whenever you say empty, it's always good to say empty of what? Because empty becomes sort of fluffy. Because reality is empty of self-existence, right? Because everything is empty of a self-existent identity and nature, right? It comes from your past karma, right? Your reality comes from your past karma, right? Because things are empty, right? Your perceptions are forced upon you by your past karma, right?
Right, but didn't you just ask about the existence of like a prevailing moral code?
The question was, how can the idea of karma, or ethics, or morality coexist with the idea of emptiness? Do they contradict each other?
Okay.
So the point here is that because things are effectively or essentially a blank screen,
Right.
the projector and the projection is what matters, right? What is the film which is being projected, right? What is the story which is being projected? What is the reality which is being projected onto the blank screen?
So that question there isn't attributing karma as the cause for emptiness. It's just asking if they can correlate, because since emptiness would be an unchanging thing, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, karma is not the cause of emptiness.
Right.
Karma is the expression of your karma. Your karma is the expression of you onto a blank screen. Your karma is the expression of your reality.
In order for emptiness to exist, for any given person, they have to have the karma to allow the perception of emptiness.
So the point here is that if everything is empty, if everything is a blank screen, what's creating your movie? What's creating a good movie for you? What's creating a bad movie for you? What's creating a good reality for you? What's creating a bad reality for you? It's your past karma, right? If you have a lot of negative karma that you've collected in the past, then as it ripens, it expresses itself as unhappy, unpleasant, suffering projections onto a blank screen. It expresses itself as a stinky homeless guy, and not having enough money and not having a good enough job and all the rest. If you have wonderful karma that you've collected in the past, it expresses itself as, wonderful, loving beings, shining in light, teaching you holy things, and, having your needs met and wonderful ripenings and, all sorts of glorious, beautiful things, right? Because our reality is the projection of our past karma. Okay? So you have to get that. Our reality is the projection of our past karma onto a blank screen, onto empty stuff. Empty you, empty you, empty you, empty you, empty me. My past karma is projecting me and you and this room and my thoughts and my likes and dislikes of those things. Okay? Because everything is empty, I have to be acutely aware of my virtue or non-virtue, of my behavior and my thoughts and of my deeds. Because everything is empty, I have to be virtuous as continuously as I can to cause a good future for myself, to cause pure projections for myself on an empty screen in the future. Yeah, Chris.
And is attaining nirvana, are you out of the karmic system?
Yeah, it's the same thing. When you attain, you have to see emptiness directly to attain nirvana also.
And okay, so it's
just a different motivation. You're just looking out for yourself instead of everybody.
Right. So
But
then
it's the same
after
process.
the direct perception of emptiness, then
You still have the same karma and emptiness thing going on.
right.
You still,
And
after,
you're working to shuck off the karmic system as you go from that side of the paths there.
yeah, I mean, the result of experiencing emptiness, perceiving ultimate reality directly is that you have a definitive awareness and knowledge of how things work truly.
Right. Because
You know,
you
profound-
understand ultimate reality, which was
Yeah.
a space that was karmic.
All the illusions we have about causation are dispelled. We think that hurting someone will make us happy. We think that stealing from someone will make us happy. And so having the direct experience of ultimate reality, we know for a fact and we see for a fact what true causation is, what the true nature of things are, and that the only way to be happy forever is by being virtuous. Right? And so then after that experience, we are highly motivated and highly committed to just be virtuous as continuously as possible. And so that's the point. The point is we can't get incentivized enough or motivated enough, or we don't have enough insight and understanding to be virtuous all the time without the direct experience of ultimate reality.
And that's why, you got things like renunciation and bodhicitta, it's a formula that goes back, the equation goes both ways, because the actions of virtue would look like your 7 steps.
Yeah, it's a progression. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
progression, right? When we talk about the 3 principal paths, you have renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view.
Right.
You don't get to a pure mind or a pure experience of highest reality only thinking of yourself and only chasing after cars and dates or whatever it is, right? So I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So this is it's a path, it's a progression where and that's the beauty of the system, right? The beauty of the system is start here. You got to start cleaning your mind. You got to start gaining understanding and insight. If you get a little insight, then add a little more insight. A little cleaner, get a little cleaner. Add a little more insight, get a little cleaner, and you just build and build and build. So that you're more and more refined. Your mind is more and more refined, cleaner and cleaner, right? Deeper and deeper capacity to understand and perceive, and so it's these upward steps, or this upward spiral, where one is simply moving from affliction and negativity and ignorance, chasing all the wrong causes for one's happiness. I mean, that's what renunciation is. Renunciation is saying, I'm not going to chase the stupid causes that don't cause me happiness, really. I'm going to pursue the things which are the true causes of happiness. I'm not going to waste my life on, cars and dates and blah, blah, blah. It's all fine and great, but it's not really the purpose of existence, I'm going to pursue the higher causes which bring true, eternal happiness. And then based upon that, then one starts to, have more love and have more compassion. And as a result of having more love and more compassion, one has a pure and pure mind and body and perception. And as one has a pure and pure mind and body and perception, one understands higher reality more and penetrates into higher reality more, until one can then eventually experience, ultimate reality directly. And then, based upon experiencing ultimate reality directly, one's like, oh, damn, I was wrong my entire life. Everything was completely wrong that I always thought and understood about this realm. This is a broken realm. This is a dysfunctional realm. This is a corrupt realm. You're only here if you have ignorance, and affliction. And so now I know what I absolutely know. I've seen directly and clearly what I have to do to, end suffering forever. Now I'm doing it. And then you're on the fast path, you're a stream ender, right? You're definitively on the way out of suffering and very close to enlightenment from that point on. So yeah, that's the progression. That's a good point to stop, huh?
So you see how karma works when you're in the perception of emptiness?
What's that, when you're where?
In the direct perception of emptiness?
No, when you're in the direct perception of emptiness, you're experiencing ultimate reality. So, which is a non-conceptual state.
Mm-hmm.
Karma is an idea.
But I mean, like, how they talk about how the knowing how the causes of things and how karma really works is extremely difficult, and only like a Buddha can see exactly why this little fold is here and there. You don't see, but you don't. Do you experience that in that same way as a Buddha would?
Yeah. So that when one comes out of the direct experience of ultimate reality or emptiness, there are a series of realizations that occur after that. You don't have conceptualization while you're in the meditation. When you come out of the meditation, there are a series of deep and profound insights that one has, that are called the 4 Arya truths, or the 16-fold. I think some people call it the 16-fold noble path. But anyway, and so it's amongst those series of realizations where one gains all those other insights. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sashi Buki Jinshin Medotram Rira Vinci Nindegampadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Luwagi Drokun Nanda Shinga Chupashok Idam Gurahnamanda Kamyatayami Gewa Devokun Sunam Yeshe Sosokshin Sunam Yeshe Vijumwe Tapakuni Topasho.
Once again, tune into the holy being that you invited at the beginning of class, and feel them close to you. Once again, focus upon the qualities that you most admire in them and aspire to. And once again, ask them to bless you to gain these capacities, and feel them enter into your heart and bless you there. What are the power of these hours that we spent together, the power of discussing the holy ideas, may we quickly come to realize highest reality, experience every living being as our dearest, closest friend, loving them continuously, working for them continuously. May we quickly attain full enlightenment in this very life and end all suffering everywhere. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for teaching.
Pleasure. Pleasure. See you next week.